goodness me.
That's better.
All right, well, without any further delay, let's welcome Stephen up to answer some questions.
Yay! Monarchs!
I'm going to try it with the mask.
Maybe not.
It is really hard to talk through them or keep them on. The last
Well,
time I
we
was here, I had
can't
a black one
breathe
and
through
it
them,
kept
but
falling
that's
off.
okay.
So, well, let me get, surely I'm far enough away from everything I read. I have been vaccinated 2 Pfizer in March, so and I assume everyone here, since this is Science Cafe, you've all been vaccinated. Anyway, questions? I'll wait first before that. Thank you, David. I love it when he asks me to speak. David puts so much effort and work into this. Look what he's done, including the food. Thank you, David. I love doing this. Okay, if you don't ask the question, I talk. Thank you.
Is Mosquito Joe promoting a lesser of insects, including butterflies? You know that it's the company out there that's spraying your lawns to get rid of mosquitoes. I hate them personally.
The mosquitoes.
I love it when I get asked the question I'm absolutely clueless on. Let's start it. I don't know. I'm assuming, I don't know Mosquito Joe,
Okay.
but from what you've told me, he is spraying, and what he's spraying has to be a pesticide. So yes, I think it probably, I don't think they
It
create.
kills bees.
Thank you. And it kills
It kills
bees.
bees and it shouldn't be sprayed.
Thank you. Okay. Go. Well, truth is, that's the issue. You spray a pesticide, it's going
Because
to
you
kill
know
other
I'm
things.
just
And
on
it
a
does kill
never
bees.
do well.
I grew up with a beekeeper. My dad was a beekeeper. I grew up with bees. So yes, there's a convoluted. We jointly found the answer to that question. I don't know Mosquito Joe. I have mosquitoes flying. Yes.
Home Depot has a mosquito control that's lemongrass oil and cinnamon oil, and it works pretty good.
Really?
Not 100%, but it works.
So that's Home
Your
Depot.
hand smacks your. We have had so many in our house. I have been shocked. And smacking them seems to work really well.
It's 100%.
You need to talk to Disney World. Consider
Well,
Orlando,
we're not
where it
Disney-
is. They
Pardon?
use this garlic with water and stuff that they spray all over in Disney World to keep the mosquitoes down. Because think about Disney World, it's in Orlando.
No, Daniel was coming in our door and they were hitting on the door trying to come in. Those are nasty little girls.
Well, there's thousands of species of mosquitoes, so
I know, and then we get our beautiful little hummingbirds. And they're just sucking them up. They do. 60% of their whatever they eat is
She's
insects.
absolutely right. We tend to think hummingbirds exist only on nectar or sugar water. 50% of their diet is small insects, period.
60. What'd you say?
Over 50% of a hummingbird's
Yes.
diet each and every day is insects, tiny bugs. It's the protein. When mom is feeding the baby hummingbirds, and we've digressed, but okay, that's the beauty of this talk. We always digress. When mom is feeding her baby hummingbirds, she feeds them insects because you can't grow up on sugar water. We all try it, but we need protein.
We watch them in the air.
Yeah, she does. I mean, truthfully, we need to think of a hummingbird as a flycatcher because it is always catching tiny little bugs. It also
She's
comes
like
to
a
all of your
parrot.
flowers, even the flowers without nectar, to grab bug, and that's what mama feeds the young ones, and that's what they all eat. They eat roughly 50%. I read a book about doing a necropsy on hummingbirds' tummies, and a necropsy is like an autopsy. It's a deceased and half the stomach is full of insects. So that's what they eat. They're flying insects. They're flycatchers. Yeah.
I have a question about the eastern and western varieties of
Uh-huh.
monarchs. Can they interbreed if they're
Yeah, it's the same
Territory.
They
species.
just can't cross the Rocky Mountains. And that's why there's eastern or western. There's
Well,
no,
I'm wondering, once they get to Mexico
Really?
or
Yeah.
whatever.
Well, truthfully, when in wintertime when they're in Mexico, they're in somewhat in sexual diaphase. They're not thinking it. They're
A
just not.
sexual
But then-
diaphase, could you please?
they stay juvenile over winter. They don't mature until the temperature gets above 59 degrees.
Yeah,
60-something.
and they're starting to come back. They're there. Well, let's back up. Or should we back up? One of the interesting words and one of the takeaways there is the very complicated migration. It's complicated, and I think you guys probably already know this. It's the fourth generation. So the fourth generation this time of year, or maybe even the fifth generation, that's why we still do monarch tagging, they've never been to Mexico. Their great-great-grandparents have been to Mexico, but still they know where to go, and that's why it's complicated. They spend 4 generations, maybe 5, in a different location. And they work their way up from Mexico to the Gulf Coast, and then probably around here, and then further and further. So it really is the 4th or 5th by the time they're in southern Canada, New England, and this time of year, they go, okay. And they're tiny.
Do you think that the little bees and the little teeny hummingbirds are somehow combined?
I missed the first part of the question. The little what and the
The
hummingbird?
the hummingbirds here, because we were from California and the hummingbirds were this big. And the hummingbirds here are this tiny and they're like, oh goodness me, they're just like bees. So are they kind of connected?
I missed the question. You're from California, and
Well, in
there you
Australia
have
and
lots
a bunch
of,
of other places, but
well, yeah,
the little hummingbirds here are like parrots
Yes.
everywhere else.
they're like
They're
what?
just like parrots.
She's saying they're so small here,
And they're bigger
they're in the
everywhere else.
bigger out west.
And they're cheeky.
Cheeky?
Cheeky.
All hummingbirds are cheeky.
Truthy. Okay, yeah. We only have one species, ruby-throated hummingbird. It's tiny. It weighs 3.5 grams.
But that's a boy.
They're both tiny. The male and the female, they roughly weigh about the same. The male may have a little more weight.
They're
So-
this big.
I know, I've got them on my
trying to
fingers.
tell people in
I've
Australia,
held
you
them.
can't believe how tiny they
They're
are.
tiny. They weigh 3.5, 3.8 grams. The next time you're holding 2 dimes, remember a dime?
Uh-huh.
We used to spend them. And now they just end up in the floorboard of the car. Anyway, 2 dimes weigh 4 grams. So a hummingbird, when I used to work here, and I did for 20 years of me working with kids, I would hand them 2 dimes and say a hummingbird weighs less than that. But no, we have that one species. They're cheeky because they have to be. They have to learn to be tough, tenacious, because you're right, when they get to Central America, they're one of the tiny hummingbird species. So they have to learn to fight for everything they get. In fact, when a female is looking for a partner, and she looks around in this area around May into June, she will pick the meanest, most tenacious male she can find. 'Cause
Well, of course she will.
you're darn right. Because she wants his tenacity in her genes, in her young one's genes.
Could I ask you this?
Excuse me?
Could I ask you a question?
Yeah, that's what this is all about.
Well, okay, so right now, like last year, oh gosh, my mask is going off, sorry. They had to fly, it's like NASA has, I know we're on hummingbirds, but somehow,
We're actually
like
on
you, we
monarchs.
get off on something else.
No, we're not monarchs.
We're on monarchs.
We-
You're on hummingbirds, we're on monarchs.
Well, there is comparisons in that,
There are, but they flew across, and they had to fly across the Gulf of Mexico. And there was a big hurricane, which isn't a good thing.
there was what, a big what?
A big hurricane.
Right. Well, the truth is, I'll try to pull us back on track. There is comparison because the juvenile hummingbirds, and many that you have at your feet right now are young ones that were born this year, either here, well, probably not here, probably New England and South Canada, just like the monarchs. They're working their way down, and they will come to your feeders. They've never been to Central America. The hummingbirds, just like the monarchs, but and they both species fly across the Gulf of Mexico. They don't have radar. They can't tell what's there with the hummingbirds and with the
But
monarchs.
don't they have like weird, mechanical?
Well, they may. I don't know. But the truth is that, hey, come on in. We just got started.
Started to be like, we had car trouble.
Oh my gosh, did we get it fixed?
Yes, we got it fixed.
You moved there.
Well, I was going to volunteer some male in here to know how to fix a car. I just don't. But anyway.
No, it was no parked behind me in between his car, so we moved him.
Okay.
Yes.
Where was it? But anyway, both very, very different species. A hummingbird, a bird, a monarch, a butterfly, fly to Mexico, and they've never been there.
Well, so the hummingbirds might,
But-
they last,
but
I mean, the hummingbirds live 3 to 5 years, so they may have been there before the monarchs.
Well, I'm talking about the juveniles. You're
But-
absolutely
but
right there.
aren't
No
we
monarch
doing-
that flies
Yeah.
now has ever been there.
No,
Aren't we
They may have a
doing
family
different-
album and say, look, here's great granddaddy in Mexico. But anyway, no monarch has been
aren't
there,
we
but the
doing
juvenile
different
hummingbirds that were born this year, they've never
not
been there.
there, yeah.
No, a hummingbird can live 6, 7, 8 years if it's lucky.
So monarchs have a genetic predisposition to head south.
A genetic compass, yeah.
They got
Homing is
a
different.
tiny, well, that's great. They got the tiniest little brain knows where Mexico is. I couldn't find
I
Mexico
have a
with a
tiny brain
GPS.
too.
I couldn't. I would go south, and I don't think I could make that leap across the Gulf of Mexico. So there is some comparison there. Okay, any other monarch questions?
Yes, so like the monarchs, when the generation's heading north, they're living 2 to 6 weeks at a time. So what big of a range do they have? If you plant butterfly-friendly stuff where there hasn't been any before, like how big is the range of the homing device that has the monarchs going north? Like what do you have to do to have them come to you if they've never been in that route before?
You know, they look for color.
Do they?
Yeah, they look for color.
They
Now,
don't look
keep
for,
in mind,
like,
there's
they
2
don't look
groups of
for
plants.
nectar?
They have to eat adults, so they pollinate. So they'll go through all kinds of plants for pollen. And so they're a great, anybody that puts up a pollinating garden will have zinnias and coneflower and all the beautiful things. I've got a friend that's got a huge pollinating garden. But now, the females, when she's been mated, will only look for milkweed to lay her eggs because her caterpillars only eat milkweed. And we only have 3 species of milkweed locally. And the common milkweed, and there's some, this time of year, the milkweed fades. There's a few plants behind you, but they look kind of over it, but that's okay. Female monarchs
Could
are not
you
looking for
show
a place
us
to lay
later?
eggs right now. What she's looking for right now is food. So then she'll come to the pollinating food. So it's really 2 groups of plants. And my friend that lives in Fountain City, she just started adding more and more flowers and some common milkweed, and she does get monarchs that come to both. But so far we haven't found an egg there.
Can you show us what a milkweed looks like here? I know it looks kind of like a ratty weed.
This time of year it's ratty. I can show. Yeah, I could. Yeah, the simple answer is yes, but I better not leave my spot because Dave will start packing up. Anyway, he'll say, well, that was a
And you
short
don't
one.
have a
Yes,
mass
there's
one
3.
today.
I counted 3 common milkweed plants when I got here, just looking around. They're all kind of wilted dead because this is the time of year they fade. But if you want to,
Because they're dying.
yeah, this time of year, but they're, if you want to plant milkweed in the spring to maybe have eggs laid on it, you do need to plant it in the spring. And common milkweed, and it gets, if you can get it going, if you work from seed, it's harder to get going. It needs to overwinter at right temperatures and dampness, but you can go to a local nursery, usually Stanley's is close to here, and they typically have the 3 kinds of milkweed. The 3 kinds that they will lay eggs on is common milkweed again, and it's 5 feet tall, and once you get it going, it spreads. And then the next one is called swamp milkweed. It likes a damper soil. It's got a more of a purpley, it's paler in color, the flower, than common milkweed. And then the one that's UT orange that we see it growing out in the fields, that is butterfly weed, and that's a milkweed.
I think I've got it on the screen, the butterfly.
No, it says no.
Oh, hang on. I was looking for a second.
Okay.
Hold on.
Anyway, the best advice there, plant flowers.
Yes!
A lot of
Plant
flowers.
flowers.
The bees love the
Here
flowers.
you go. Right now, Stephen.
There's the
Is that it right there?
Except that we're just.
Yeah, that's butterfly weed.
everything's
That's butterfly
dying
weed.
right now.
Where do you get it if you wanted to plant some? What's the right, you go,
The best thing, just go to a local nursery like Stanley's.
They'll
Stanley's,
order it for you.
or, what's that?
They'll order
Yeah,
it.
Stanley's is a very, if you go to a place, and I go to Lowe's about once a week. Anyway, but if you go to a place like Lowe's or Home Depot, they're not necessarily selling native plants, whereas a native nursery is selling plants that.
Where do we have a native nursery?
We have three that are grown found in Tennessee. There's more milkweed across the country, but Tennessee has 3 different species.
No, she was asking, is there a native nursery around?
Dress's nursery.
Yeah.
Dress's nursery on Clinton Highway.
Yeah. There are native nursery, if you Google native nursery Knoxville, they'll come up, but Stanley's is the one I use because it's so close to here and so close to where I live. But all parts of town, I'm sure there's nurseries that specialize in native trees and shrubs and flowers. Okay, so in the spring, plant your milkweed and your flowers, and with luck, the more colored, when we do the tagging of monarchs in Cades Cove in the fall, I'm a volunteer for Tree Month.
Your hair's so.
On days that the fields were very colorful are the days we're more likely to find monarchs. And there's certain days, say when the goldenrod fades and before the asters kind of pick up and take over, on a day which is just kind of, the fields are kind of dying dead, the flowers, because the flowers each flower has its own kind of period. We see monarchs flying over. They're not landing because there's nothing for them. But if it's a day where there's a lot of, they love thistles too, oddly, and that's non-native.
Do you like
But they love that
salvia?
color of thistle. Yeah,
What's the shortest native milkweed?
it would be the orange one. But that's the least one as far as laying eggs, but it's UT orange.
That's what attracted me.
Yeah, right, I know, you want to put all around your house. Nature has made very few orange flowers for some reason. I once wrote a whole article about that for Tennessee conservationists, but the butterfly weed, UT orange, monarch friendly. Can't go wrong. Any other question?
Salvia.
I've heard anecdotal evidence that some monarchs are starting to overwinter in Florida and not, as opposed to Mexico. Have you heard anything, whether that's fact or just some anecdotal, were people mistaking the one that looks like a monarch that's not, or whether there are actually some monarchs that are starting to overwinter in Florida?
The one that looks like a monarch and not is a viceroy, and when they did the very first video, they slipped in accidentally a photo of a viceroy. We were seeing all those beautiful photographs. I went, oh, there goes a viceroy. They look very identical.
Right.
But, well, that's what's going on now, guys. That's why there has to be study.
Can you please talk about the ones that are in California and the ones that are over here?
Okay, I'll get back to there. Where was I here?
Whether they're actually monarchs in Florida as opposed to.
Yeah, well, see, the truth is this, and this is why they did apply, they did try to get monarchs put on the endangered species list last year, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife said, whoa, wait a minute, we don't know yet. We got to do more study. part of the study is what may actually be happening is this whole migration, this whole behavior of an insect to migrate may be being done, nature may be removing it. Because the biggest problem, and we heard several problems, including herbicides, pesticides, and habitat loss. Habitat loss is lack of flowers being planted. That's where you can help. I just read, there was a study that came out from Michigan State University this spring, and they had looked like, they had crunched the data on 18,000 monarch counts, like I do with tagging.
Yeah, I've done them too.
And it's the greatest thing in the world.
I know, I did it at Audubon State Park in Kentucky.
Well, you can do it, Seven Islands does it, and Tremont does it.
Excuse me.
I'll get there, I'm not gonna forget you.
Gorgeous
Anyway,
woman.
what may be happening, climate change is altering climate, see, so the monarch is moving through basically 4 different home spots in its 4 spell. And they crunched all the numbers for 18,000 counts, like I do. I'm scheduled to do 2 this year at Cades Cove. And then they compared all of those 18,000 counts, good years, bad years. Good years as far as monarch tagging numbers. And then, this is where they got real smart, they compared it to the weather at each date, and the low counts typically were, am I talking too loud?
No.
I'm yelling, okay. Blah, 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 blah. Anyway, the bad years, the lean years, either it was too hot, too dry, or too wet. Monarchs don't like the extreme. The butterflies don't like the extreme. So climate change may be ultimately the biggest factor, but it is not necessarily going to make them extinct, but it may alter their behavior, and they may only go to Florida, not across the Gulf of Mexico. So it's, we don't know. The biggest answer is they simply don't know, because climate change is happening constantly.
They need air conditioning.
What? Yeah, I know. We just crank down our air conditioning. Okay.
How do you tag butterflies?
What's the most wonderful thing in the world?
Never done it, so I'm asking.
This is a tag,
Okay.
and this is where you put it on the back side of the wing, not the front side of the wing. These are what the tags look like. Pass it around. That's a sheet I didn't use from 2019, so those numbers no longer apply. I couldn't use them.
How did you tag that?
You grab them with a butterfly net.
Yeah, butterfly net.
Yeah.
I used to do this here, and the beauty of a butterfly net, it turns us into 10-year-olds.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to have families behind me, and I give everybody in the group a butterfly net, and the parents would just stand there watching their kids, and I'd say, you can do it too. And the next thing you know, the parents are having more fun than the kids were, because you get permission to be a 10-year-old. So you literally in Cades Cove, when we do it there, the only difference there and here, when someone catches any butterfly, they bring it in. I'm usually the one sitting keeping data. Anyway,
You put these on their little wings?
well, one of them, yeah.
Oh my word.
And then you let
And each one has a different number, so that butterfly has a license plate.
Ah, that's really cute.
Okay.
So
If
they
they like
can,
register, they'll notify you if they get like if you tag the butterfly like in Kentucky, and if somebody gets that butterfly net down in Tennessee the next day, they'll know that it came that far in one day. You know, I mean,
sorry.
How long does the
I'm
tag
too
stay
old
on
to
them?
get up and
they only live. The generations going north and south only live like 4 to 6 weeks, so
right?
it doesn't have to last that long.
But they live a little longer because they overwinter.
Well, but the ones that overwinter are going to live like 6 months. So
Okay.
if you're tagging them late in the season, then they're the ones that overwinter.
These hang on the t-shirts through Washington.
Oh, okay.
It's tested. Anyway, I need
Well, I don't have my reading.
I need to we need to give kudos to the people we need to give kudos to. All of this was figured out by a Canadian married couple named Fred and Nora Urbach. He taught zoology at the University of Toronto. She was fascinated by what he was doing, and they would notice, and this is in the 1930s, they would notice that
Oh, back in.
and so this would be an early example of citizen science. We all are scientists. Scientists don't just wear lab coats. If you can ask the question and no one has an answer, you can figure it out. Anyway, Fred and Nora, excuse me, they created.
I'm old. Thank you. He's helping me. I'm old.
Are you leaving?
No.
Okay, you're asking great questions. Let me finish my story. Anyway. Fred and Nora.
Sitting down again.
What's your first name?
My first name is Robin, like a bird.
Hi, Robin. Stephen Lynn. Anyway, let me finish. Fred and Nora, they would see monarchs in South Canada and they would leave in the fall. Where are they going? No one knew. Do they go somewhere? No one knew. And so they organized, trained a lot of, first they figured this out. How can we do this? How can we do this? How can we figure out where they go? They created the basic system in the number. Of course, back then it didn't have a website, just had their home phone number.
Did they have to count them?
Well, they're come numbered. And they tried different adhesive, like postage stamps, brainwashed it off. But then they found an adhesive that you would put, someone would put a price on a jar of pickles that sticks to glass. And it works, it stays on there even through rain. So then, just like you said, they recruited a group of volunteers all across northern United States into Canada to get out there and tag, and they would turn those numbers in, like the number was 4512. And all of a sudden, and they would say, oh, you tagged number 4512 in Buffalo, New York. And then someone else caught 4512 in Knoxville. Oh, wow, that butterfly in 5 days flew from Buffalo to Knoxville. So they drew it on a map. They drew it. They kept doing this and doing this and doing this until it's, where are they going? It appeared they were all flying to the Gulf Coast of this country. Well, and so Fred took a sabbatical. Come on, we're going to go find our monarchs. And so they drove around Gulf Coast. No monarchs. None. So Nora, I always like to give credit to the lady partner because she has the best answer.
So good.
I mean, she said, why don't we find a couple of, you think, Fred, they might be going to Mexico? Well, I don't know. What do you think? She recruited, she put an ad in a Mexico City newspaper, wanted naturalists to look for monarchs. Got a call, and from a man named, I don't remember his name, for some reason, he recruited a partner, Catalina Aguarde, who was like 22, 24 years old, a naturalist, but she knew the countryside. She knew the dialect. He was, and again, I've totally lost his name. But not Catalina Aguarde. Anyway, she and Jeff, whatever, they would go into the mountain, in the foothills. Have you seen this? Have you seen this? Have you? Oh yeah, they fly over all the time. They fly over. Where did they go? Mountaintops, in the Mexican dialect. Anyway, it was her with him that found this, and this was what announced, this is one of my prized copies of National Geographic. This came out in, let me think, August 1976, and they had announced in an article written by Fred, and he put her on the photo, I'm on the cover, Catalina Guarde. I just love to say her name too. Anyway, she's the hero in this.
I love that.
They had finally found where the monarchs went, and this was 76, and Nora and Fred started in the late 1930s. So it took them 40 years to make this cover. Anyway, but like you said, they drew numbers. They do. Some of the ones that we tag in Tremont this fall, each one will have a different number. If that one turns up in Baton Rouge or wherever, they'll draw a line. Okay. But things may be changing. That's how evolution works. That's how climate change is going to drive evolution, period. It's going to force change. And they may no longer, we don't know, migrate to Mexico. They may be happy in Florida. They may be happy in the Gulf Coast state. Okay? Okay, question.
Thank you.
What about the north and the south ones that moved?
What I'm gonna do, probably it has no solid answer. But in all probability, if you make your yard butterfly friendly, let's say monarch friendly, in all probability, how long does it take for the first butterfly to
In
show
all
up?
probability.
You got any
What
probability?
happened?
I have no idea. I have no idea, but it will happen. Truthfully, my friend up in Fountain City, she retired about the same time I did. She's instead of working all the time, she started working on her gardens all the time. And she planted milkweed too. She planted all kinds of, she was creating a pollinating garden for all the insects. But she put in common milkweed too, and she gets monarch. Now, to date, she's not found an egg, but she gets them. So and that's 2 years. That's her time frame.
And she's seen oh, she hasn't seen any caterpillars yet to eat
No.
okay.
She's looking at it. When I visit, I look too, but not yet. But she's only really been focusing on this for 2 years. You know, when you retire, your life changes.
Oh, yeah, I know.
You'll love life
I planted it at
again.
my friend's house, she just moved there.
Right?
Parsley plants.
Huh?
Oh, and the swallows found them. The little swallow butterflies, whatever mom.
Yeah.
Found them. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Or the tiger swallowtail.
Yeah.
When you
Well,
get
the odd thing
old,
about tiger
you
swallowtails,
get
and
to
this is a
sit
little
in
bit
your
of a
park
digression,
lounger.
guess what their host plant is? Tulip trees. That's a Tennessee state tree, so they lay eggs 30, 50 feet above ground, but they still have to eat, so they come down to the flowers. So, and all of us have a tulip tree in our backyard.
Oh, so they eat the flower and then they go.
Well, that's where
they
they made up, they hook up, and she lays eggs on tulip tree, wild cherry, and there's one more. There's 3 trees that a tiger swallowtail uses as host plants, but they're all way above us, yeah.
I worked 4 years on a pollinating garden and went on vacation for 2 weeks. My gardener said, I killed all those awful caterpillars you had running.
Oh my God.
Oh my
Did you fire him?
I fired him.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
I mean,
He had written directions not to get them.
do not kill a caterpillar.
Do not kill anything.
Right.
Don't touch
Well, I
Oh,
know,
you're
there's a
darling.
mindset that anything with 6 legs and a caterpillar has 6 true legs and another 8 pro legs, just kill them. Okay,
And
Robin,
you
I
can't-
didn't answer your question
And
about
you can't kill
the,
spiders either.
no, right, don't kill the spider. You asked the question about the western population and the eastern population.
Yes, thank you.
Well, I'm older, so I had to put it on a Post-it note right back here somewhere. Go ahead. Well, the different, it's the same species, they're just separated by the mountain range.
But it's a huge mountain range, so.
Yeah, they don't,
Okay, so
they don't
I'm a stupid Californian, right?
do what?
I'm a silly Californian. So they used to come up in the trees and, oh my gosh, they would only open up when it was warm. But I haven't noticed that kind of stuff here.
Well, just keep, yeah,
Here, meaning on this side of the Rockies.
oh, really? Well, if you saw the video, it's the western population that is dramatically in trouble. They went from an overall count of over a
Western meaning
million.
California area.
Yeah, that's the ones that go down the west coast. They went from an overall count in the late 1990s, well over 1 million. Last year, it was less than 2,000.
Oh, you're kidding me.
I'm not kidding, and she said it, so.
Well, I didn't
You got
see this. I'm
correlation
sorry,
right
we were
here.
late.
Do what?
We were late. I didn't see your
Oh, you
video.
were late, I'm sorry. Anyway, David he always does a wonderful video that kind of lays out all the information. But that population last winter was down to less than 2,000. So they're saying the western population has declined since 1990s, but 97%.
So
and
how
what-
are we doing here?
They're doing better, but not great. Here, they're down 80%. And how do you sense as an insect? For
I don't
here,
know.
how do you count them?
I'm sorry. I'm actually having a fit and falling in it with the little penguins that got stung on their eyes and, you know what I'm saying?
Thing in the news about the
No, there's just things going on that we
Well,
can't
It's South
really
Yeah, it
do
was in
things
South Africa.
about.
Not in America.
So,
It has nothing to do with the butterflies.
Yeah.
That's an American.
what?
Well, we don't have penguins, but
Well,
what
South
you're saying,
America,
Robin, all over the planet, there's those kind of stories.
there's
We are
terrible
pushing,
things.
and we're pushing this planet way, way, way.
So my question to all of us is, what are you gonna do about stopping your oil use?
I have to do that.
Yeah, well, truth is, we all need to be more mindful and do environmentally smart things. I finally found paper towels made out of bamboo. Yep, bamboo's an invasive species. Okay, question.
Is the wildfires having a dramatic effect on the butterflies?
Yeah, have to, yeah.
I mean, and those are moving here east too. I mean, we had wildfires here in the 60s.
I know, I grew up in Gatlinburg. My childhood home was burned down March 28, 2016.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Gone. I can't go home again. Thomas Wolfe was right. Can't go home again.
Sorry, California and
I'm dying to
sequoias.
hear about Luna moths. What do they eat? I mean, do they eat when they're a moth or just as a caterpillar?
They eat when they're a caterpillar.
And you just see one just ever so often. You don't see them very often.
I have yet to see one this year.
I haven't seen one this year either.
Wait,
I
excuse
had
me,
one
sir.
this year
Excuse me,
in the
sir,
very
what
same
caterpillar?
place as I had one last year. It was on one of my garage doors. I came out one morning, there it was.
I know.
Stayed there during that day and then it was gone. And it's funny, about the same time last year, same thing, same door, same place.
They like the door.
I don't know.
Excuse
I
me.
did a lot of green.
Don't
Truth
light on
is,
tonight.
there's more moths
Yeah,
than
do
butterflies,
have
but
a
the moths are having the same
butterfly.
kind of issue. I don't remember, I'm trying to go back and to remember what a host plant for Luna is. I think it's a tree, one of our local trees, but I can't quite remember. But if anybody's got a cell phone, Google Luna moth host plant, boom, you'll have the answer. There's a where
Are
do we
there
go
more
with
of
this?
them in the Smokies than there are down here?
Do I?
Are there more Luna moths?
I would suspect there's more everything in the Smokies because it's its own environment and they're guarding everything up there like they should. What was I going? There's a wonderful. When we were kids,
White birch.
what's that?
White birch?
White bird.
Okay.
Thank you. See that? I used to try to memorize everything. You don't need to.
Yeah, there are
Anyway,
others, but
there's
they're not
always
my
someone
favorite.
with a cell phone can check you. Anyway, when we were kids and we would take a long car ride with our parents, say to Florida, at night, the windshield would be covered with insects, moths. And I remember Dad having to pull over and scrape the moths off the windshield. Do y'all remember that?
Oh yeah. Love
That
those
doesn't happen
too.
anymore. And there's a
Why?
wonderful, because they're all dead, we kill, anyway, flying insects are dramatically increasing all over the planet. And there's a wonderful book out written by, I haven't read it yet because I don't know. Some of the books I read just make me so darn depressed. Anyway, this one is called Moth Snowstorm. And it's written by a British naturalist. And he describes that, oh my, when we were kids, it was like driving in a snowstorm. And your windshield would get covered. It doesn't happen anymore because that moth populations have dropped that much. So, and if you want to read a dire book, that would be a dire book. One day, I'll get brave enough to tackle it and go, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Okay, any other questions? We digress, yes.
What eat moths?
For the naturalists in this area, find most of the monarchs, and where do you go to look for them?
You typically this time of year go out to fields. Well, around times, I honestly thought I saw a monarch fly over that goldenrod right as we were starting. I was back there. So you look for flowers, you look for color, that's what they're looking for. So you look for fields in State Park, Seven Islands, now that's Tremont, I deal with Tremont, Case Cove. That's acres and acres and acres of fields, and they've slowly learned not to mow, at the right time of year to mow. And there's plenty around. I haven't been to Case Cove yet. My first Monarch date is next week, but I'm sure it'll be gold from goldenrod, and they see the color and they come to the color.
Do they like Rose or Sharon?
I would imagine.
I know the leaves and
Yes, but what if you can imagine, put your mind into the little tiny body of a monarch butterfly. And you're flying, and you typically fly when you've got a push, a tailwind. Same is true with hummingbirds. Hummingbirds fly at night, and they wait for a night when there's tailwind, pushing them. They don't fly into a headwind, it'd be silly. Monarchs, the same thing. They're so light, they'll be blown backwards. So when they're flying over, when they got a push from New England, and they're flying high, oh wow, look at all that yellow. That's food. They go down. So the more color you can put in your yard, the more you'll attract them. My friend, who I've told you about twice, 3 times now, she's got a huge, one of her gardens is filled with ironweed and goldenrod. Gorgeous together. They're both native, and she gets butterflies to come in. Ironweed, it's past already. It's the purple one.
Oh, okay.
That's ironweed. What we got here is frostweed or a little over there, the white, and behind me we got
What's
frostweed
this over
and
here?
wild woodland sunflower and goldenrod.
What's this over here, Darlene?
Yeah, if you get, these are native wildflowers. Now, one of my picky, we named them weed, like milkweed. It's useless. It's a weed. Let's kill it. It's not a weed at all. Just because we think it's a weed, who are we to call it a weed? It's not. Monarchs would say, I don't look upon it as a weed. So that's part of this. That's his whole business. So we're holier than thou, and that's a weed. No, it's not. It should have been called I don't know, milky plant. Yeah.
Butterfly milk.
Butterfly milk. Yes.
Yeah, the Butterfly Festival is online this year at UT Arboretum, and they have a biodiversity garden and have instructions on how to grow butterfly gardens. So, and it's going to be on there to October 5th.
Well, if you go to the virtual, Butterfly Festival, then click on Activities for Kids, and you will see moi teaching kids how to mathematically draw a butterfly. We taped it 2 weeks ago. So anyway.
Beautiful.
Just go online and go to UT Arboretum Butterfly Festival. This is the second year they've had to do it virtual. We were going to do it live, and then my goodness, we had to put our mask back on. Yeah.
So a little while ago you said that right now is not the time that they would lay eggs. So it's an annual migration. What are the time periods that they eat and the time periods that the egg laying is taking place?
Well, they eat all the time. So you want flowering plants all the time. Typically, that overwintering generation that all of a sudden are interested in reproduction will fly back, and they typically start landing on the Gulf Coast. And if you want to follow this, go to Journey North Monarch, and you'll see them as they slowly work their way north. Journey North Monarch, and you'll see the maps, and the maps are updated every day. That overwintering generation will start laying eggs as soon as they get back, as soon as they get over the Gulf of Mexico. They look at each other and say, you're the right for me, let's get going, let me lay eggs, and now it's my time to die.
So they're laying eggs when they're wintering?
Not when they're wintering, but when they're coming back.
When they're coming back?
Yeah, when they reach the Gulf of Mexico, when they reach the Gulf Coast, up into Florida and all the Gulf Coast states, and maybe even this far, it's debated if they do come this far, that first overwintering group, and lay eggs, and then it just kind of steps up. Each phase, each generation lasts about 4.5 weeks.
So every 4.5 weeks, they're laying eggs because the next generation.
Yeah,
comes.
the next
Continue
generation,
nurturing.
once those first eggs hatch along the Gulf Coast, and the caterpillars eat the milkweed they've eaten there, when they're adults, they move north, they move north, they move north.
And it's 2 generations?
It's 4, although there's some debate, it came maybe 5. That's one reason that, okay, we know where they go. But they're still tagging, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention a naturalist named Wanda DeWard. She's the one that started the tagging program for Tremont at Case Cove, and she started in 1998, the same year I started volunteering here. But she's the one that started the Tremont, and that's why I'm one of the, there's like 18 people that volunteer to be facilitators to help. Typically, we get families and kids, typically.
So if they lay eggs here, when is that?
Typically here would be June-ish, May, June, somewhere in there. And again, it takes close to a month for those eggs to go go through all the phases to become an adult. And then once the adult, she'd move north. And they eventually reproduce, they die, and then it starts over, and starts over, and starts over.
Well, I hope he does.
It's absolutely fascinating, and it is complicated like they say.
So they spend about 6 months wintering.
Yeah, that's the one generation that overwinters and lives the longest.
So 6 months, so they spend basically 3 months going north and then 3 months coming back south.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then they take basically 2 generations to go north.
Yeah.
No.
No. It's the ones that are now, it's the 4th, maybe 5th, there's debate there, that's why they're still tagging it, to kind of refine what is known and where they go. At first, they didn't really think one reason Wanda said she started in the Tremont, they didn't really think they used the Smokies. They were either on the coast or inland, and she's proved them. Last year we tagged over 800.
So they cross the Smokies.
They probably come flow down with the winds down Shenandoah Valley into, just like migrating broadwing hawks. When broadwing hawks follow ridge hawks.
I mean,
Okay.
you find monarchs on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Okay.
My book, I wrote a whole chapter, my book, here he does a shameless plug. My 3rd book is called Ephemeral by Nature. And each chapter is about something that's ephemeral. And one chapter is about monarchs. And it starts with a vacation at Myrtle Beach. And I was vacating from Ijams, sitting there and it was the right month, sitting there, and monarchs were flying down the coastline. And I kept counting them. I wasn't tagging them at all.
Well,
Anyway,
yes,
question.
I am. Yes, we are. Yes, I
It's
am.
more fun. It's more interesting to me to hear.
Oh, really?
How do I recognize the monarch?
Yes, I am. Well, no, but
What color?
It's striped. It's green, yellow, black, and white.
I've got one on the screen.
They just showed them right there.
Right there.
There you go.
David's got it.
Okay.
See, David's great. Anyway, I have raised, so I would know how it's done, and because this is a topic I talk about a lot, I found one monarch egg. That was when I retired, I had, one of my bucket lists was to take a photograph every day of metamorphosis. And I wanted to do monarch, and I looked at and found one egg. It was milkweed in a ditch on Johnsonville Highway. I took it home and I photographed it every day. And it took roughly a month to go from tiny egg to adult. And when she flew, and it was a she, you can tell the difference. When she flew, started flying around, I caught her again and took her back and put her in the exact same spot. And a ditch off
Did
Johnsonville
you
Highway.
take the whole milkweed home with you?
No, I just broke some leaves.
Just broke some leaves and put it in the...
They keep well in the fridge, and just put them in a glass of water, they keep well. And it would, the first day or two, it only a tiny bit, that was actually caterpillar. And then, when it's that big, it's eating an entire leaf a day. That's all they do is eat, and we know, did we discuss why? Did anybody say it? They eat the milky sap, which makes the caterpillar toxic, and that makes the adult toxic. Now, occasionally a bird will grab an adult monarch, go spit it out. It's like, oh my God, that's worse. And they go, I'm never going to try one of those again. So I have found once at Ijams on a milkweed, there was a monarch that had bitten in half, adult had been bitten in half. Oh, well, that bird won't eat that again. Won't try that again. Yeah.
Isn't that protection for viceroys? They're avoided because they look so much like monarchs, but they're not poisonous, right?
Well, there's new studies out that they may have something going on too. Yes, there's a species of butterfly that looks almost exactly like this one. And they had, one of the photos in this, in the first thing we watched, was a viceroy. And I'm not trying to be a smart butt, but it's got an extra stripe that goes across here.
And aren't
This
they
one-
a little bit smaller?
They are a little bit smaller, you're right. Way to go, David. Anyway, here's my show and tell. This is the boy.
Is that the,
This is vice
is this the viceroy here? Is that extra stripe?
No, keep going.
Keep going.
It does have a stripe, David. It does right through here. Anyway,
Okay.
this is the boy.
Okay.
See these two little spots here? Those are scent glands that he wafts his pheromone out. A female does not have these two spots.
On the bottom of the tail.
She just has to get lucky.
Come on.
She just has to get lucky and follow the scent.
That's right. He'll say, I'm here, I'm available.
That,
No?
that's not the viceroy?
Keep going, keep going, keep, whoa, no. Just keep looking, it'll have a stripe that goes this way, David. It looks like this, but there's an odd,
Stripe that goes, okay.
claw. And it's only there briefly, and I'm not trying to be smarty pants.
Trying to find it here.
Okay. And if we do catch viceroys in Case Cove too. We do record all the butterfly species and numbers that we catch, but only the monarchs get tagged. Yeah.
Maybe I missed it. How long does that egg take from a baby egg to grow the larva when she flew away?
So when it flies away, it's
Yeah, how
close to a
long?
month.
Almost a month?
Really?
And then it'll stay alive about 2 weeks as an adult. So it spends far longer going through puberty and all the stages of metamorphosis we learned about in the 4th grade. But then it's got about 2, maybe 3 weeks, depending on all kinds of factors, while it's looking for a mate, laying eggs, and flying north.
Say a few things about the monarch chrysalis. It's really beautiful. The chrysalis of the monarch.
You're going to get me to wax poetic, aren't you? I did raise one and had it on my dining room table in a centerpiece. The chrysalis, when it gets there, and I think David may have a photo, or I can send everybody here a photo if you just send me an email. Anyway, when it gets, it's green, pale green in color, like avocado, like that's the color of the chrysalis. And it's got these gold spots on the outside of the chrysalis. No one knows why, what those gold spots are. That's where the spinnacle, that's where it breathes. It is a living creature with a heart and lungs, but at the same time, it's rearranging its cells. Now it's inside, it's got imaginal, I love the term, imaginal discs, which are the rudimentary wings and thorax and everything, but when it's in there, all the cells are rearranged and come back together. And then finally, and I got up one more, when it, all of a sudden, it's no longer avocado green. All of a sudden, it's black and orange. Uh-oh. I got up early that morning, had my coffee, and I'm staring at it. Okay, I'm not leaving this table. And all of a sudden, is it born head first? How's it born? It cracks open from the bottom and it pushes its little head out, upside down. And then the wing and its legs, it's never used them, they're long and gangly, are pushing to open that chrysalis up more, but yet they can't do it too much, they'll fall to their death, because they're working against gravity. And so they're pushing, and then finally it swings down the abdomen, and the wings are tiny. They're like deflated balloons and the abdomen's going, it's pumping the wings full of insect blood. And the wings grow, and at first they're wet, and eventually it takes it's the most amazing thing, and here's what drives me crazy. The beauty of nature. The shell of the chrysalis is transparent. What? It is, you can see it, you can watch it. When it pops out.
Is it pumping blood?
Yeah, insect blood. It's not red, it's greenish.
Yeah.
Hemolymph, thank
Right
you.
here, right here. I've got
What
it on
call?
the screen
What'd you
again.
call it?
Right? Hemolymph.
Ah, yes. Hemolymph is the blood. This is how it looks. And that was going, I did it one time on my dining room table. Took them roughly a month.
You said the gold right here, right there. That's the gold.
Yeah, that's where it breathes. It needs air, it's got a heart, but it's goop. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful goop that rearranges itself. Yes, Dave.
Lest some people think that imaginal discs are imaginary, they're not. The word comes from the imago, which is the adult. And those discs coalesce, like you said, and grow into the adult, but they start out in the body of the larva that forms the chrysalis.
Is that, yes.
Could you please turn around and repeat that, please?
Does anybody else want to? Okay, inside the chrysalis, where
This is an open mic.
where the
That's the
caterpillar,
right?
the caterpillar has formed a chrysalis around it, and it undergoes a change. The caterpillar tissues get dissolved, and those nutrients form the basis of the nutrition for the adult to form. But
What do you mean it gets dissolved?
Inside that chrysalis, it's like goop.
Yeah,
it is very, at first it's very goopy. It's as if you put a whole lot of meat tenderizer on a piece of steak and left it for several days. You would turn it into something that wasn't worth eating.
It died.
Well,
That's its life cycle.
death is an ethereal concept in this case. So you've got the caterpillar that forms a chrysalis, and enzymes begin to dissolve the caterpillar tissues.
Oh, that's just kind of weird, creepy.
No, it's not creepy at all. The formation of the adult needs those nutrients to form the adult. And the way the adult forms is from imaginal discs. And the word imaginal does not mean imaginary. It means the adult is called the imago. So they're imaginal discs because they're inside the goop. And there's an imaginal disc pair for every adult structure. So the wings have wing imaginal discs. The antennae on the bug, the adult, have their own imaginal discs. The eyes have their own imaginal discs. And the reproductive parts have their own imaginal discs.
So they've all got little bits and parts they're imagining?
Exactly.
Oh, goodness
And
me.
those
Like
different parts coalesce and grow into the adult. And the nutrition for them to grow is the liquefied tissues of the caterpillar. Did I say that right?
I thought you did a great job.
Thank you.
Well, for someone who doesn't know anything, you did a really good job.
Good analysis, good.
How are y'all so smart?
Where we at? Looks like, we got 15 minutes?
15 minutes.
Okay, 15 minutes. Any more questions? We're now experts. Every one of us is gonna plant milkweed next spring. Except me, I live in the woods, I can't grow impatiens,
Does
yes.
it matter, can we, there's tons of milkweed, do we have to plant the native ones from here, or can we plant any milkweed?
Well, you really need to plant native, because you know they're adapted to be here.
Okay.
And the monarchs that pass through here are looking for the native ones. Now, if you want to plant something else, you can, but for 20 years I've recommended plant native, plant native, plant native.
Well, no, I'm saying there's more than 3 varieties
Oh,
of
yes,
milkweed.
yeah.
So
Well,
I
she
can plant
says
any variety,
Yeah.
other than those 3 varieties.
Well, that's the ones that have evolved to be here, so, and they love it here. But no, she mentions the number, there's lots of different milkweeds.
Well, their study said that people were trying to plant milkweed, and the seeds or the plants that they were buying weren't the right kinds, and so,
They just didn't do it.
so the 3 you're saying are the good ones.
Buy the 3 natives, because you know they like it here. And we did, Ijams has them around, but this
Where do
is
you
the time
find
they're all.
them?
Are they annual or?
Go to Stanley.
Common, they're all perennial. With common milkweed, if you can get that first year, get a good solid plant, next year you'll have 5 or 3 plants, next year 10 plants. They'll
Keep
form a,
the thin
yeah,
out or what?
they
How do you
keep,
manage that?
you just have to cut them back. They spread through the roots, and next year they love a
They
damp
had a full
soil.
sun? They're full sun?
Full sun and damp soil, and if you get them going, my friend has to cut it back a little bit, it's gonna take over the whole garden. But that's what.
All milkweed required a damp soil?
All milkweed.
Or, the native?
The ones here like it damper. Now, you've seen the UT orange one, they'll be out in the fields, so that's a drier soil than, say, around this pond, which is typically damper. But the ones out in the fields, bright orange, and those are, they bloom for a long time, and they don't get very tall, they're short plants. Question?
Well, I do have a question because we're talking about a specific species.
Yes.
So, are there other ones, like, okay, we've got butterfly bushes and, I know they're not native, but can you plant things like that? Because I'm seeing butterflies all over them.
Yeah, there's
So is
multiple
that
species.
okay for them?
Yeah. We have, this time of year, we've got viceroys, we've got red admirals, we've got painted ladies, we've got tiger swallowtails. If you live near a pawpaw tree, you've got zebra swallowtails. So each butterfly has a separate host plant, but they will nectar and find pollen on any flower that has it.
Well, they're trying to eat, but they're also trying to make a baby.
Well, yeah, they're spreading pollen, yeah. That's what the flower only produces a little bit of pollen. Flowers only produce a tiny bit of nectar. That hummingbird that goes, and I know I've moved over, but the hummingbird that goes to a flowering plant like, I'm looking for cardinal flower, I don't see it. A flower produces a sip of nectar. And that's why the butterfly's going flower, 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 flower.
That was a really sexy.
Or hummingbird flower, 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 and only sip, only sip, only sip, because the hummingbird or the monarch are spreading pollen wherever they go. So that's what, it doesn't behoove the flower to produce a pint of nectar like we do when we put out sugar water feeders. They produce a sip, and so the butterfly or the hummingbird sip, 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 but when he does, it's moving pollen from here to here to here to here. It's all gorgeous. The way it all works is incredible.
And what's amazing to me is how many insects things eat. So we're all smacking our those things that eat us?
Yeah, well, the most successful group of animals in the planet is insects. Beetles.
And they're all girls.
Beetles are the champions. Beetles are like, gosh, every time I look it up, it's a different number. It's something like 300,000 species of beetle. Beetle is the perfect shape. folds up those fore wings and covers up the flight wings, the hind wings, and crawl under logs. A butterfly can't do that. So beetles are, they're like little bitty tanks that can crawl under logs. Beetles are and that would include fireflies, that would include ladybugs, those are all beetles.
Really?
Yeah.
So, we're off target. I know, because I'm gonna go back to hummingbirds.
Okay.
There's these little tiny creatures, and we've sat in our backyard and just watched them eat
That's what
insects. It's like
Well-
they have more insect-eating power than they do nectar.
Yeah, truthfully, to get rid of your mosquitoes, put out a bunch of hummingbird feeders. That would be enough.
Well, we have a lot of flowers.
Well, anyway, yeah, that's how I've spent my quarantine, my COVID quarantine, is sitting on my screen porch watching my 8 hummingbird feeders. Now, the numbers are dropping. The peak of hummingbird
When are they
migration is Labor
leaving?
Day weekend. And so I'm seeing less and less and less, and I'll soon start taking feeders down. This morning, I don't think I had more than 5, 6 hummingbirds.
Oh, they have been chirping like
I know,
crazy.
Whereas a week before Labor Day, I was seeing 20. So but that's normal.
Most of what we see in transit right now.
Yeah, I think the ones that were born here are gone. The
Are they
males
going
that
to
were here and have
Mexico?
served as the papas are gone, so is the
No,
mom.
I didn't have one male this year that
Really?
Really? Did
That
you not
surprises
have
me.
they were
that?
all, the
Really?
only ones I had were either, like no color,
Yeah.
Yep.
or just for the past 2-3 months. And then just recently, I've been seeing some that have a little green on it, but no red stuff.
No red.
Well, that just means no males, but watch the ones you're seeing. If it's a young male, it'll start getting red dots. When those red feathers are starting to come in.
So far.
Well, just keep watching that. You'll eventually, oh my God,
What's
there's
the,
one.
no color?
Well, okay, just watch. I bet you will
What is
eventually
it?
see a
Is
young
that
male.
male,
just
female,
start to
is
get it.
that young, or an adult, or, I mean, they're like no green and no red that I can see.
Do they
Well,
have
you'll probably
time to
see the
mate?
juveniles. The juveniles going through. You know, we only have one species, I'll finish hummingbirds, we only have one species of hummingbird. If you go to California,
Do
there's
they
like
have
16
time to make, well,
species.
California are this big.
Yeah, well, again,
And here
ours
they're
are
like
learning to be
this.
tenacious, so when they get to South America, there's like 400 species of hummingbirds. Hummingbirds are, they're very fragile, but it's an incredibly successful body design for
But
birds.
when they went, okay, because they're little tiny and you read that they have to go into torpor
At night,
at night. And so last year, they had to fly across the Gulf of Mexico, and there was this terrible hurricane. So I was really worried that they wouldn't come back, but they were full on this year.
they come back. A man named Mark Armstrong, who was a retired curator of birds at the Knoxville Zoo, he has a permit not only to ban summer hummingbirds, wood throats, but also wintering hummingbirds.
It bans those little things?
Yeah, you put a little leg band. That's what they did at the Ijams Hummingbird Festival. Mark was down at the home site,
Oh my
and they were
word.
catching hummingbirds to put the band. Here's the point, why do you do these numbers? Why give a hummingbird a piece of jewelry? It's got a number on it. That number's written down, and Mark has told me that he will catch the same hummingbird in the same backyard almost on the same day during my
Will they
break.
come back? It's not their babies?
No, they do, yeah, it's like,
They live a few years.
they memorize yard. It's like when you and I are driving,
Oh,
when
they
you and I
know
are
us.
driving to Florida, we know where every single Cracker Barrel is. or whatever. Anyway, honey, are you hungry? No, I think I can wait till about dusk. There's that really nice cracker. Well, a hummingbird knows backyards. It memorizes your backyard. I'm sure if Mark would tag one at your yard, it would be back eventually.
If you put your hummingbird feeder at the same spot, like on your window every year, if you don't put it out early enough in the spring, they'll be at their window like, come on,
Yes.
there's supposed to be food here. I mean,
Where's my
right
food?
there at the window going, no, I know this is the spot.
Really?
Oh yeah, they memorize.
Well, it
They're
depends on
there.
where you are, because my
Yes,
sister
ma'am.
puts them out in, like by the first week of May, but she's in northern Michigan. So I don't know what the earliest is here. He might know.
What is the earliest?
See a good food source, they won't.
Maybe the rest of the other one.
The rule of thumb is crazy. When to put out your hummingbird feeders? We've jumped. We've got crazy day to crazy day. April Fool's Day to Halloween.
Oh,
That's the rule of thumb. But typically here and at my house, I don't see a hummingbird till around April 11th. But that's the rule of thumb. Crazy day. Okay, it's April. It's time to get the feeder out.
Stephen, is this the Viceroy? Did I
Oh, you're
finally
still working it, aren't you? No.
That's going on, okay.
You won't let that down.
I got him. He'll go home
you
tonight.
live up
I'm
there.
gonna find that Viceroy. I'm gonna send him an email.
There was one that the reporter was in the nursery or whatever, and there was
Does he
a
let you
plastic
sleep?
one that looked like it might have been a Viceroy,
Okay.
but I didn't see any other.
Well, now,
Doesn't have the cross on it.
Wait, you sent me this. I've got it on my cell phone. When I get to tonight, I'm gonna go through it again and do a screenshot and send it to you.
Okay, we got time for one more question.
One more question, yeah. Sheila.
Oh, last question.
Sheila!
What colors are the monarch butterflies? Are they mostly orange or?
Yeah, they're orange and black like this. Now, they can be, to my eye, the final generation is a richer orange. I've never read it, but I think that's true. It may be because it is the final generation that's gonna fly all the way to Mexico. They may be more robust. I don't know. That's another reason why they're still collecting and tagging and trying to solve some of these questions. But it is orange and black, But
Do
the
they
orange can
always
be
go to
cute.
Mexico?
Yeah, it's horizontal.
Only the last generation, if they can make it.
Okay, what butterfly is the blue one that kind of reminds you of a monarch? Like that little one.
We have a couple of blue ones that I would imagine, a pipe bush swallowtail is a gorgeous blue. There's a female version of the tiger swallowtail, yellow and black. There's two different color females. One is yellow and black like the male, and one is blue and black.
Okay.
So that's
I just remember seeing a picture of like a pine tree full of these blue, look like blue monarchs. And I was like, it was just full. I was like,
There may be others, I mean, truthfully, there's over 750 species. I think we're finished.
yeah, thank you.
No!
Let's give Tim a hand.
David gets the hand.
yes.
I just come and talk.
He doesn't get to go home till he finds the viceroy.
Uh-oh.